Hello everyone and welcome to the program. I'm Seun Okinbaloye in Lagos. You probably would have guessed at some point that all has not been well at the state-run oil firm, the NNPC. The leaked letter of the Minister of State for Petroleum, Dr. Ibe Kachiku, is symbolic. Washing over dirty linen in public, this may be unintended, considering the fact that the minister sent a letter to the presidency and not the public. But the junior minister, like some would call him, said the NNPC Group Managing Director, Mr. Pt.1, is not following due process in handling the business of the firm. He accused him of insubordination. So on Friday, Ibe Kachiku was at the villa to see the president. Also, in an interesting tweet to the story, Pt.1 was also cited at the villa. Afterwards, the president ordered that the bickering should stop, apparently because it is becoming embarrassing. The minister and the GMD may have stopped the bickering, but a spotlight beams with so much intensity on the corporation, all thanks to Kachiku's leaked letter. It is important to note that the NNPC is an integral part of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and as the president has been trying to unbundle roles at the corporation in relation to the ministry. But there is one question. Should the president continue to act as a minister? Hold that thought, everyone. We get to that in a moment. Here's another major question raised in the letter: corruption. So I asked the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, when I had a one-on-one with him during the week at the sideline of an event in Abuja. And this is his reaction.
There are beliefs that about half of corruption which goes on in government in Nigeria happens in the NNPC. And under this administration, there are reports. Have you gotten any reports about investigation in the NNPC?
Well, first, let me say that this government has, from the beginning, carried on a thorough investigation of activities in the NNPC, and it's ongoing. As a matter of fact, we also agreed with the governors. Don't forget that the proceeds of oil are not just owned by the federal government, they're also owned by the governors, owned by the states, beg your pardon, not just by the federal government. So what we've done is that in the NEC, that's the National Economic Council, we actually constituted a committee that was charged with investigating all of the activities of the NNPC.
Well then, that's the Senate, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, earlier in the past week. Well, Senator Omotari Alasha-Adura is the chairman, Senate Committee on Petroleum Resources. He's in our Abuja studio. He joins us now on the program. Many thanks, Senator, for coming on the program. Let me begin by asking you straight away. The Senate did weigh in on the issues surrounding what has happened in the NNPC, the letter that has gone public, the letter that the Minister of State, Ibe Kachiku, wrote to the President. Though he did not copy the Senate, it was written to the President, but the Senate seems to be concerned about this issue. What else has the Senate found out in all of this scenario that you want to tell us tonight?
Well, it's just a reaction to the fact that such a letter came from the Minister, Junior Minister of Petroleum Resources, who is the chairman of the board of NNPC, and it was such a thing that hit everybody, so suddenly that one wonders how an organization could run outside the provisions of the Public Procurement Act 2007, which clearly stated the powers of the Executive Council, the powers of the board, the powers of the GMD, the powers of people below the GMD. So we found it not funny at all, and that's why the Senate quickly set up a committee, a subcommittee of the Senate, to look into all these things and report back to the Senate.
It's interesting, Senator, when you said that it hits you as a surprise as the arm of government that does his oversight function on such an arm of government like the executive and the NNPC, for example, as the chairman of petroleum. It's interesting that you're saying that this comes to you as a surprise. Don't you have a mechanism to track some of the event that goes on in the NNPC?
We do our oversight maybe once or twice in a year, and what is happening on a day-to-day basis cannot be captured while we are in the Senate. It is only when you go there, you ask for information, you ask for records, you check those records, you check the information that has been given to you, you compare, and then you are able to come to a decision whether things are going on well or not. Before then, in fact, one of the things that the executive arm is always complaining about is the frequency of how the legislators come to ask them questions to see what they are doing and so on and so forth. Sometimes they believe that we are intruding too much into their day-to-day activities. And because of that, we now decided that maybe 2, maximum 3 times in a year, we go there, look at their records, ask questions on whatever we may find not very explicit to us. And at the end of the day, a report will be generated. But as at the time this letter was leaked, there was nothing like that has been brought to the notice of the National Assembly.
Senator Alashadura, since Mr. Mekanti Baru took over as the NNPC GMD, have you noticed any form of behavior in his activities that is relating to some of the allegations raised by the Minister of State, Dr. Kachiku, on, for example, insubordination and perhaps the allegations of corruption and awarding of contract out of due process?
Well, the last one you mentioned, the awarding contract out of due process, is one thing that everybody will look at. I'm sure Mr. President will look at it. The Senate will look at it. I'm a member of the committee that was set up by the Senate to look, into this. So if it happens, I think we're going to make very serious recommendations to Mr. President on this matter. But as to insubordination and all the other things that were said by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, that one has to do with relationships. It has nothing to do, as far as I'm concerned, with the work that we will go there and look at, unless there is a complaint that was brought to the notice of the Senate. That is why when we will go into such things, it's like in your office, if a junior officer is not cooperating with you, unless you even let the management know, the management of your organization, they will not be aware of what is happening. So, how much more of those of us who are outside the executive, we will not know until something like this comes up.